how did everybody's week go? I'm curious about feedback on the new map viewer. Obviously, there are still some issues and some kinks, but I'm definitely curious about impressions so far.
I haven't had a chance to play with it too much. I'm actually going to go and do probably my first real deployment since the map viewer come out. Been a busy week for me.
All right. Anybody else?
So it's a definite improvement over the old map that we used to have. Um, I've sort of came to rely on them, a lot of the features that have already came out, even though they've only been out for like about a week or so now. I especially like that you're able to see which units, when destroyed, belonged to which person, and just like the quality of life improvements, being able to like do the coordinates, etc., based on where you're clicking, so it's much easier to navigate. Because I'm absolutely terrible at reading the coordinates in this game. So yes, definitely, it's been absolutely fantastic from my point of view. I'm really impressed with it.
So for mine, I'm just trying to help you put it all so you can render it completely from JavaScript. So I'm just wondering when the missing variable can be added.
So um, there's been feedback on Discord and other fixes. Just to give you guys an idea of what I did this week, I spent all week heads down on the server. I'm in the process of trying to. Well, we're on the final phases of migrating to a brand new server. This is going to be a new version of PHP, new version of the database, new version of the Linux kernel. This is the whole thing's getting upgraded. On top of that, I came to find out that our backups that I had hired the company to do 10 years ago were actually copying the same data from 2010 for the last 10 years. So knock on wood, the server never fell over because it turns out we actually did not have a backup this whole time.
Nice.
Uh, but that should hopefully all be in the past very soon. I have been spending my week on the new server, getting it tuned. There's all kinds of new caching strategies that have come up, all kinds of new performance approaches. I've implemented as much as I could, and near the end of the code jam, I want to open it up to you guys and let you guys start to give you guys a taste of the new server and see what you guys think of what you think of it. Yes, that was actually something that was identified with the server move. So RIN is the term processor was running over every single unit, alive or dead, and the problem we were hitting was people obviously do a lot of bandit farming on RIN, and so there's a ton of dead bandits, and all of those dead bandits are making it into the turn processor. And so the turn processor is running over 10K, 15K, 20,000 individual units, and each one of those is an update to the database individually. There could be strategies to batch that, but the database really doesn't need to do a lot of work on dead units. So when I was tuning the new server, I actually had a chance to really take apart the turn processor code and pinpoint what was going on. So our current RIN times, I think, are running about 10 seconds plus when it's near the end of the orbit and it's dealing with 15 to 20,000 um, mostly dead bandits on the planet. With the new turn processor, I pointed it at that same load and it runs in a second and a half.
Well, that sounds significantly better.
Fridge, just a quick one. What are your thoughts on having an expiration date on a dead bandit? So maybe like 48 hours, or maybe even 24 hours. I know it'd be specific for any faction war and Rin planets, but maybe then they kind of decay and then disappear, and then that might help with the backload of dead units.
Yeah. Well, the term processor is already fixed. Now we could have a million dead units and it's not going to impact the term processor. So that is fixed on the new server. The new server is back about a week, so you guys can hop on Rin and see what the turn times look like. The map viewer also has a similar issue, but I have some ideas on how I can approach that as well. we probably need some kind of expiration date on bandit corpses. I do, but part of me kind of likes the character it gives Rin, because Rin is just this enormous graveyard, and I think that looks kind of cool. I think it kind of gives the game some character, and it's not just flat and dead. Um, but there's probably some sensible expiration time we can have on bandit corpses. So yeah, I think from a practical standpoint, sure. I think X made a comment that when we brought this whole thing up, and I noticed that it was causing both map lag and turn processor lag. That was the start of kind of considering tuning removing those for performance implications. But at the same time, it was also a great way to really test the turn processor and to tune it and to make it performant. So now the turn processor actually, if we have thousands of player controlled units on a planet, the turn processor should also be performant. Once we get into the tens of thousands, hopefully we have that problem. We will see some sluggishness again, and we can talk new strategies. But this was definitely a hurdle I think we needed to fix now that we're sort of honing in on how we want large army planets to work, because you can't really, if the code falls over trying to run large army battles, then what's the point in the first place?
I agree. If we're taking 6 hours to do what should be 4 hours, it makes it a little less enjoyable.
So I'm just gonna, since you didn't really address it, so about the map viewer thing, I'm still trying to help you implement it all there, and I actually think there's a lot of issue I can fix there, because I read through the code and there's a lot of issue there. Like you store a lot of, for example, just the simplest thing is that you store a lot of data into the HTML itself while it's already existing on the data structure, for example. And then there's the issue of how certain div are drawn, and then that. And I think I could try to do the JavaScript render, and I can group that all into a, like, there's a lot of things I would change there. So I would just like to know if that's okay and if you're gonna provide the data for that.
Right. Sorry. I guess I apologize for not being clear. The reason that I didn't respond to anybody's request on Discord this week is because I've spent 100% of my time working on the new server. So I haven't had a chance to look at anybody's changes or any of the bugs with the map processor. X, you and I talked about how the future is hopefully the whole intent of this update is to move towards client side rendering of the map with JavaScript, but that would it took 2 months just to get to this point here. So this was kind of a good milestone to get parts of that code in there. But the PHP is still rendering a big chunk of that, and that's why that's in HTML. There are certain things that do need to be in the divs that allow for the game to more quickly find bits of data. But in terms of the rendering of the HTML, yeah, that definitely the end goal is to get that into JavaScript.
So I actually have a fix for to make sure that you don't have to change the PHP side immediately, because what I can do is I can actually just, okay, so you hand me this variable and you hand me this HTML page, and because those are legacy, I'm just gonna delete them all, and then I'm going to draw it as long as I have the data for it. So on that end, it's like you already have some variable. There's just some missing one, and I can push all the data together and draw it on the JavaScript, and you can just plug it in and see how that works. That would save you a lot of time.
Yeah, no. Once I've got some bandwidth, I'm going to look over. I've got a lot of messages about bugs and scripts and tweaks. So I'm super stoked that you guys are diving in and helping out with this. I don't have the bandwidth. I haven't had the bandwidth to assist with that right now because the server move. Given what really kicked it off was browsers are now shutting down older versions of the SSL transport protocol, and that's causing major security errors to appear on the site. So, and on top of that, this move also revealed that we don't have backups on the server. So, if something catastrophic were to happen to the server, all this goes away. Like I hired the company to set up backups on a slave and ship them on a nightly basis. So if there was a catastrophe, we could do something. Unfortunately, when they set up the slave, they didn't set up replication from the slave. So while we have backups, all the backups are from 2010. So
We-
yeah, I definitely want to do all this good stuff with the game, but getting this new server up and running has just been my number one priority for the last week.
Oh, no, I'm just asking like in the near future. It's past week is already done and all that.
No, when you and I talked, early when the map viewer came out, what I was trying to communicate was that I'd love that the whole intent of these updates is to move the thing into a modern framework where all of it is built in JavaScript and on the client side. And then we can start doing really cool things like there's no more turn refresh. Like you move a unit into a sector and then the game just reveals the sector to you and the bandits in it and you just keep playing. There's no page refresh, anything like that. Like it plays almost like a real-time game at that point. And that would be so cool. That is a huge goal of mine, and there's so much work to happen to get there. But that is definitely where all these efforts are headed towards.
Frisch, just in terms of flat feedback from the new map viewer, do you feel that, or does anyone else feel that there's any lag in terms of actions per minute? I'm finding myself even with hotkeys kind of targeting less, and there's a bit of a delay. Is that anything that you've encountered your end or have any experience in seeing, or is it just kind of in my head? And now it's a new system, I'm kind of worried it's slower.
So there is a change. So I've been thinking about this feedback and thinking about what could be causing it. So when we talk about, I don't want to get into this whole discussion about lag and how and what server side lag and client side lag. Effectively, at a high level, lag is X. I think you're hot miking. You are hot miking. Let's just be direct about it. If you can go to push to yourself, that would be great. So whenever we talk about lag, usually it's in reference to like a server action. Like I tried to do something and my client took time to try to send that action to the server. What I think is happening after kind of thinking about this over the last couple of days is in order to improve rendering and kind of get the game ready to do JavaScript processing of the map, the old way of generating those multi-unit stacks was to build all of this framework around them, stick things in them, and then have a lot of arrays that basically said this is in a stack, this is not a stack, and the status of the stack. And it was an absolute beast to track, and there was just conditional code on top of conditional code to take care of it. That completely was removed and ripped out just for sanity's sake. And now the units themselves, when you click on a unit, it asks the game whether or not, actually, it doesn't even ask the game, it tells the game whether or not it's in a stack, and then the game responds to check the stack and decide if it needs to open it, close it, and do any stack-related operations. That cleaned up the code immensely. The downside of that was to get to the technical issue. It gets into what necessitates a click when you actually like click something with your mouse. So in a web browser in HTML, there are 3 separate actions with a click. There's a mouse down event, a mouse up event, and then a click event. The click event is a full mouse down and a full mouse up. When you do that on an element in HTML, it fires off a click event. Because there are so many context-based actions and so many things nested together, when you mouse down, it's very difficult to determine what you are trying to do. Do you have a waypoint active that you're trying to set? Do you have an attack action? Are you clicking on a unit? Are you clicking on a stack? there's all these different little conditions that play into that click. So what I did to break those out is there are certain actions that occur on mouse down, there are certain actions that occur on mouse up, and there are certain actions that occur on click. And what happened was a lot of the actions that used to occur on mouse down, which gives the game a real snappy feel. Every time the mouse it detects that you are pushing the mouse down, it fires an action. Those were moved to mouse click, meaning that you had to then take your finger off the mouse to trigger those actions. And that can definitely create a feeling of lag, because before you would begin to click on something and just that mouse down would cause actions to happen. With this new system, unfortunately, a lot of those things got moved to a click event, which means it's not registering your finger going down, it's registering your finger coming up. Um, and I think that is causing the perception of lag. It can definitely be addressed down the road, and I can dig deeper into the whole click event handler. But I'm pretty sure that's the cause of it, especially if on this new server there's still this perception. Pay more attention to how you're clicking on things, and if you're noticing that it's when your finger comes off the mouse, that's what's causing things to fire. That's probably what is causing the lag. X also commented about lost clicks, and I think this behavior is also might be causing lost clicks because things need to register on the same element when you mouse down and when you mouse up. So for example, if you have a scrolling stack and you start a click on one unit and the game scrolls that unit while you're in the process of pushing down on the mouse and pulling up on the mouse, the click is actually on two different elements, and so it's not registering a click on one distinct unit, and so it's throwing away that action. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. Just while you're saying that, I'm testing it. If I hold it down when I'm hitting on a stack, it only opens it when I take it off. So if for any reason you have kind of heavier fingers and you take your time to lift it up, that would result in that noticeable lag. So you kind of have to tap it on and off rather than kind of holding it down, because as you say, there's a bit of delay. But no, that makes complete sense. And it sucks you've been put in a position to do it, but it's out of your control. So
with the original map viewer, I built everything around mouse down, and then I just created, and then every time there was a bug, I just wrote more and more conditional code to fix it, and it was unworkable to keep that. I definitely want to try to keep it responsive, but there are so many things that you could be doing when your mouse is when you're sending a mouse down click event. Um, that's probably a lot of work, and at some point I can definitely go in, because I definitely want the game to have that snappy feel that you get from your intention by doing a mouse down. There's just a lot that needs to happen under the scenes for the game to figure out your intention when you are mouse downing on something, given everything else you can do, like setting a waypoint action or doing an attack or doing a stack move or doing doing an all attack. All the different things that a mouse click could be trying to indicate to the game.
no, for sure, that makes
Again,
sense.
so I'm again just like, sorry to say this several times, but I'm just saying that I'm offering to do this entire thing for you like third time now. So
Yeah, no, X. And so
like I've been looking into a lot of these problems. So the reason why I pestered you about the variable so much, because I actually intend to redo that, a lot of those, because I saw a lot of the code and I can identify their problem. I've been looking at it for a week, but I really don't want to like make fixes based on HTML alone. So that's why I've been asking you for the variables.
right, and I've just been explaining that there are other priorities right now, so I'm not able to make those changes. But I definitely want to make those changes. So it's
Yeah,
nothing. Okay, it's nothing. It's not personal. I'm not ignoring you. It's not. It's not. Oh, this is like the server absolutely needs to be updated because it turns out we don't have backups, and our SSL is so bad that now browsers are throwing giant error messages in place of the site, along with a number of other issues that go along with a 10-year-old server. So, like all my focus right now has been going in to try to stand up a new server, and like I've spent the last 7 days staring at a command line.
No, I'm
So this is not personal. This is not me ignoring you. There is a super high priority thing that absolutely needs to be fixed, and if it's not fixed, it risks bringing the entire game down. Once I'm out from under that, then I'm happy to like go in and continue the nice things of like making sure the map viewer works and all those other pieces.
No,
I'm
100%
just like,
longevity over conformity at the moment.
but I'm not asking you to like pay attention. I'm not referring to that. I'm just referring to that I'm willing to like help you actually take care of that for you, so you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
It's
And
my point here.
yeah, no, and I mean, your scripts are awesome. I totally appreciate the work that you've done. And it does feel like it's the beginning of a framework to allow more community involvement in the code. I think the approach is going to be to surface all the JavaScript in a public repo and allow people to do pull requests into that JavaScript. That way, it's all public. It can be reviewed easily. It can be tested as well and rolled back and versioned. And then that approach is a nice way to streamline the JavaScript code into the game. Um, I think when we tried open source 8 years ago, I just threw it all up there and didn't really consider the implications of putting the PHP up there along with the JavaScript. The PHP changes get more into the game rules, and it's less about the efficiency. It's more about, well, I want this to give more rewards, or I want this to balance that. That's a deeper discussion. And so not only do you have to evaluate a code change at that level for its technical merits, like has this figured out all the corner cases? Are there things that are going to cause the server to blow up? But then you have the added burden of what's the game implication to this change, and that makes those kind of changes just take forever. And that was kind of really why I've been hesitant to go back down the open source road. Um, Now, flash forward to where we are now, people are already making JavaScript changes, and I think that's great. Honestly, I'm really excited every time people post new JavaScript changes and the the improvements that have come through that. I think you and Rec have both done really amazing jobs with that. Um, and PK, I believe, also um, did some work on that as well. So there are people who are getting more into the JavaScript, and that's fantastic. And that's the kind of stuff I want to leverage. I just want to build out a Git platform so that that's formalized. And so when people are able to give back to the game, they can just open a pull request to that game JavaScript. We can review it in Git, and then we can incorporate those changes into the game.
Yeah, weekly sessions like this, once we have a Git up,
Does that sound good?
we can all kind of just hash back together and be like, yeah, that's an improved update. We can go ahead and move forward with that. Done and done.
All right. Silence is consent. All right. So that was feedback on the map viewer and on the server update. And X, just to be clear, I absolutely appreciate your help with the JavaScript. And once I'm free from the server thing, I'll look at your requests and we'll surface those values so you can continue working on it.
Frizz, just a quick one in terms of flipping the question on you. How now you've gotten your head out of the server stuff? How do you feel the response has been? Is it in a place where you're happy with? Where are you at with it now? It's kind of out and in the wild.
The map viewer?
Yeah.
It's a nice small step for me. I don't think I'm really going to feel content with it until I can deploy to a planet and it's not in a frame set. There's just one map in front of me. I can pull up things like unit info, commander info, and it's all just in one screen. Maybe it's draggable or maybe it's docked somehow, but it's just one giant map in front of me. And then I move my units and there's some kind of graphical indicator of the turn that's showing me how much time I have left, but I'm not even really paying attention to that. I'm just moving stuff around. And then suddenly a unit, all the animations go off to show me where my units are going to go. And then suddenly all the units actually move right in front of me to their new locations, and the server reveals new sectors right there and then shows me the bandits. Like the bandits fade in, like they've just appeared in those sectors. then I will feel good about all this.
So next week then, yeah.
Yeah, next week we'll just knock this out in the next 7 days. It's not like I haven't been getting much sleep with this. Anyway, I might as well continue the trend. I do like that I was able to kind of set the foundation to get to that. I think very early on when in April when I kind of started doing development again and started looking at the condition of all the code and seeing where the map viewer was at. I just had this thought of like, man, it would be so awesome if this was really modern and animated and there was none of this page flash and it really looked like a game with animations and attacks and things. You could see where things were going and where they came from, and it all made sense. And it wasn't this kind of, you know, it didn't look like a web game. It looked like a real game. You were just playing it in a web browser. Um, and it's definitely encouraging to me to be able to kind of hit a major milestone that gets us closer to that. But at the same time, like seeing all the work that's needed to kind of realize that, sometimes you just can't think about that. You just have to look at like the next little hill you have to climb and not think about the entire mountain.
I think I don't know if you have any like practice or
All right,
use
do you guys
with
want to check out the new server?
Unity, but I think Unity's a good platform for maybe working on something like that to have fun with.
I'm gonna take that as a yes.
I guess Frizz can't hear me. Can anybody else hear me?
I can hear you. I think Frizz can't hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so Frizz has got me muted.
Frizz, can you hear PK?
Oh, I think whoever that was cutting in and out.
Can you hear PK?
Oh, no, I guess I cannot. He's muted on my side.
Oh, you haven't blocked him.
Yeah, we can all hear him.
Oh,
If you right-click him, you can unmute him.
PK, I muted you. I'm sorry.
I was
man.
wondering. I had a few comments in there, and then like you just moving right along. Well, okay, it's cool. You know, whatever.
Okay, so for the sake of me, could you?
Well, we'll just
Yeah.
retouch on the last one. As far as something to maybe in like your free time, I don't know if you've played with Unity at all, but I've actually started like I used the HiveMinder design and worked on kind of like a real-time mecha fighting game, and I've just been kind of toying with that on the side every once in a while. But I think we could convert over to like a Unity-based mobile version / web version. Not too difficult to do. It would definitely take a little bit of time, but just as like a small, enjoyable web project, it's been kind of fun to work on.
So actually, you're giving me PTSD because like 6 years ago, I started on a real-time Unity version of DropShock, and I spent like 6 months on it. Um, and it had like it had units moving in real time. It did attacks, destruction animations. Um, it was a bear. There's when you go to 3D and a framework like that, you can't do it yourself anymore. Like I'd need a team of at least two other people, probably more. The cool part is if moving towards this JavaScript implementation, in order to get that in place, the whole thing is going to have to run off of APIs. And the cool thing about an API is it doesn't care what it's sending data to. So if someone wants to go down that road and build Tiny Wars deployed Unity that just talks to the API, more power to them. You will have all the tooling you need in order to actually build that. If you want to build full on 3D DropShock Tiny Wars in Unity.
Well, now you're just teasing me. Mine was mine was just as simple, you know, like you can set a coordinate and the unit moves out, or tell it where to right click and he'll move across the map, and you could fire some lasers at another mecha. It was pretty basic, but I was toying around with it for a while. But now that you said that, yeah, if we're going to all APIs, it wouldn't be difficult at all to get some poll data and actually make a deployed screen in Unity. I mean, it wouldn't be like a tomorrow thing, but it wouldn't be too difficult.
Yeah, so next week, right?
Exactly. Next week.
And sorry, it was Slayer. Slayer has a project that he's been pinging me about all week, and I've been needing to check my Discord so I can take a look at it.
Guilty.
And it sounds, it's yeah, it's and Slayer. I saw the enthusiasm when you were posting about it, and I was like, this guy devs, like somebody who gets that excited about finishing a dev project. Yeah, I definitely feel that.
It's funny. So Thurston in the general chat, he's my brother, and he's obviously I've played DropShock for 12 years now, so obviously he's a little bit younger than me, so he's never really engaged with it, but known I've been playing it. And he's a hardcore developer, and I thought, my interest for coding, how do I mold those two together? So between him kind of showing me the ropes and my passion for this, it's kind of made quite some fun things to do during quarantine. So yeah, I'm pretty grateful for it. It's good.
And don't worry, Frizz, you're not the only one that he's been pestering nonstop.
I stopped pestering Frizz. He ignored me, so I just moved on to someone else. I'll find someone that responds.
Yeah, no, I saw all those, and there's also the bugs that I need to look at as well. I just every moment I've had of free time this week has been grinding away on this server. There have been so many things that changed over the last, because basically I got the server 10 years ago and then never touched it. And there were so many things that needed to change, and things when I put them in, like the performance just tanked. And it's not been a pleasant 7 days. But it is looking really sharp now. So what I posted in CodeJam, that is the IP of our brand new server. It's got backups. It's got a modern database. It's got the OS is modern. PHP is updated. There's new caching on it. I don't want to oversell it, but this is kind of slick. So what you have to do to access this is you have to force your computer onto that IP. So that if you're connecting to DropShock, you're actually connecting to the new server and not the old server. So the new server is a snapshot from 7 days ago, and the turn runners are currently disabled on that because I was getting those working on server restart. That way, if something happened to the server, it would continue to run the game, and you guys wouldn't have to call me. And that's working now too. I need you guys. So basically, at this point, I'd like you guys to kind of poke at it, do some deployments, see what you think of the new server. And if you guys don't find any major issues, I'm going to tell the hosting company that we're ready to migrate, and we'll hop onto our new box. So what you have to do is, if you're on Linux or Mac, open your Etsy host file, and then put in those entries, save it, and then in Chrome, you're going to have to clear your DNS cache. I'll post a link for that as well.
Whoa, so many steps. We're going to need a guide and a walkthrough and a YouTube tutorial.
We are. Can you go sign us up for a wiki and get on that, please?
Yeah, no problem. On it.
Hey, Frizz.
On Windows. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to ask you about Windows. Please proceed.
Okay, so Windows, there's also a hosts file. I'm going to have to Google it. Anyone off the top of their head know where the Windows host file is? I think it's just Windows
Yeah,
slash.
there you go, it's in CodeJam.
There you go. That's your one. So in that Etsy folder, there's a host file. Edit that, drop in those entries, and then save it.
One thing on Windows, sorry to interrupt, one thing on Windows, you have to run the text editor as administrator, otherwise it won't save at all.
As soon as we do that, then we won't be able to access the live server, right? We'll be test server only.
Yes, but all you have to do is comment out these entries, and you can drop back to the live server. You can toggle between the two.
Comments are semicolon?
Hashtags. They're £.
Thurston or Sulfur, can one of you guys put together a step-by-step for Windows, and ideally every single one, and just kind of post that on Reddit, or give it to someone that has admin to post it onto Reddit? Because I think that'd be really useful, rather than us spending a good portion of Frizz's time kind of doing it everywhere. But I think there's a few idiots here, myself included, who don't have a clue what to do. So yeah, that would be good if it's okay.
All right, and the first person who connects to the test server is going to get vanity feedback from me on their account. I'll think of something silly, but I'm hanging out on the test server right now. So I'll just keep refreshing. Let me know when you're on, and I can start the turn processors as well. This is a server that's a snapshot from a week ago when Rin had about 11,000 units on it. It's got the new updated turn processor, so you should see Rin being a lot snappier than it was as well. I will say, in order to fix that, I had to split out how the game handles destroyed units and non-destroyed units. So that may have introduced a bug with salvaging or with unit necros, things like that. I did try to catch that wherever I could, but there's so many ways that the game you can interact with dead units. I may have missed one. So definitely, if you see some wonkiness on this new server, let me know, because this is a chance to fix bugs with the new optimized turn code. And then, yeah, the last piece of this also, if you're in Chrome, Chrome also does DNS caching, and you'll need to go to that Chrome, you'll need to paste that link I posted into your Chrome, and there's a button that says like clear DNS cache. You'll need to click that because it also, Chrome also does DNS caching for you as well. So not only do you have to change the values on your operating system, you also have to tell Chrome to stop caching. Thanks, Thurston.
No problem. This is stuff I've done all too much.
Yeah, when I had to dive into this, it was like, God, this is like being at work.
Yeah.
All right, so where does that put us looking forward? With obviously, there's some bugs I need to fix with the new map viewer. It looks like there's also an issue with cloaked units in the same sector. I think when we finally settled on them was on with cloaked units is if you were in the same sector as a cloaked unit, you could see it, you just couldn't attack it. And it looks like that change was dropped when we went to the new map viewer. But other than that, there's a couple minor issues.
Yeah,
I'm glad that we don't have to. Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I think the only things that we've lost in inverted commas, and as you say, most of them are just due to kind of code kind of overwriting any pre-existing stuff or features that we have. I think the only ones are the cloaking, and when you're attacking target, you don't get a rangefinder, so you get it when you waypoint, but not when you attack target, which is obviously just quite minor. And I did send you a bug where I can still collapse and lose a stack, but when you click on and off, it reappears. But that's really minor visual problem. But yeah, I think they're the only things that I can notice or I have noticed, and I think they're the only ones that I've heard from other people as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think it seems like we got most of these stack bugs taken care of. All right, let's take a look at Reddit. So Slayer, you had the comment about Rin 4 times a day instead of every 6 hours. That seems really sensible. It's every 6 hours just because it's easier to save a timestamp and then do an hour check against it. I guess it was easier when I implemented it. I've got some new strategies for that, so it should be pretty. I think it'll be pretty easy to put that in place. I've got some ideas on how I could attack that. So yeah, let's slot that for a future quality of life improvement, because I agree with you. That way you're not forced to check the game every 6 hours, which isn't my intent. It was more just to space those out. But you can kind of run those 4, and then you can call it a day. Or maybe should we knock it down to 3? Were people really logging in every 6 hours and doing getting all 4 of their priority runs every day?
Well,
So
I would say with the overlap, people were only getting about 3 in. Because, I mean, logging on exactly every 6 hours, you were probably losing an hour or 2 here and there. But I was definitely trying to. But if we just made it 3, that would make it easier to knock out and be done with as well.
Okay, let's make it let's make it 3, because also I don't want you to feel, I don't want it then to become, oh, I've got to log into DropShock today and do my 3 priority runs. Yay. Well, what if we made it weekly instead? That way we're not punishing weekend players versus, people who can play every single day.
Well,
That would
so
be
you
a-
can do a combined 21 in a week or something.
Yeah, how many should we? So if we did 3 a day, why don't we make it an even 20? You get 20 priority supply runs per week. You can run them whenever you want.
Yeah, that definitely makes it a lot better for me personally. I don't know how anyone else feels, but it is a lot easier. Like if you have 2 hours where you are able to allocate to play the game, you can get 3, 4 done in those 2 hours compared to, okay, I'm gonna do one and then I have to wait 6 hours, but I'm not able to play in 6 hours sort of thing. So I think
equally,
that is a lot better.
it will reduce the what's the word, the salt of someone who has to, doing a RIN supply run priority might be their only way of generating active revenue. So if for any reason that gets contested, there could be an element of unhappiness that they can't do anything in inverted commas for another 6 hours on that planet in terms of the specific revenue generation. So if anyone does commit their 2 hours to kind of grinding it, if they do get contested a few times, that's okay because they can just redrop and counter the units that are down or kind of avoid it. So I think that helps really well in the favor of people being more open-minded to Rin being an active planet to fight over versus kind of don't attack me or I'll get annoyed, which very much has been the kind of status quo.
Okay, this here's Old Possum. I'm logged into the new server.
I see it. I see you and Dog. So I'll give you and Dog. We'll get your vanity feedback. In your profiles. Maybe I'll throw in a tuned unit as well. Although actually not for Dog. Dog that'd be an insult to Dog.
Can you give him a 1-slot unit?
Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna give you a negative slot unit. I don't know how I'm gonna do it yet, but it just in the system it's gonna be -1.
Pardon me, Frizz, I didn't quite catch that. What are you going to do to my account? I mean, like a title or something?
Dude, it's gonna be a surprise.
Uh-oh.
It's going to be one of those things where you can never log in again. It's going to be great. I think they call it banning. It's going to be great.
Awesome. I've been banned before.
Is this
though.
like the next level of multiing? So you have multi accounts, but now people have multi servers.
Yep. Yeah, this is so. All of you are now in violation of the DropShock terms of service. Thank you very much. Have a nice night. No, this is I'm my I had a huge worry coming back because in the back of my head for all these years it was this kind of persistent question of, all right, when is the DropShock server going to fall off the face of the earth or have a hardware failure or get attacked in some way because it's so old that there's just no recovering from it. This new server puts so I don't you say this is like the Titanic sailing in a way. So let me caveat all of this with failures still happen, things still go wrong, but there are so many kind of modern conveniences that come along with this, and modern backups and checking. There's even stuff that there's kind of new code now that looks for certain attacks on the server and preemptively blocks those accounts. On top of that, there's so much good stuff that comes with this that I'm going to feel a lot better about knowing that the server is going to be around for a long time now. And if something catastrophic does happen, there's a lot of options that can be leveraged to get the game back in place.
Cool. So if this is the Titanic, can I say, I'm the king of the world?
You just did. All right, let's make this server actually playable, and then we can see how this goes. All right, so pardon the dead air. I'm just gonna get this running.
Oh, no problem. I actually have patience.
Are you sure you're playing the right game?
Yeah, this guy sounds too positive to be a Tiny Wars player. I don't like it.
Sounds too what?
Far too positive, far too optimistic. I don't like it. Can you just lower your voice and grunt a few times? Just be unhappy.
So people trying to access the new server, you may have to clear your DNS cache as well. I have
I'll
my
have that in.
ETC host set up perfectly, and yeah, I had to clear cache
I
first
have.
because it just kept going back to the old site.
Okay, turn
You know, weird.
processor.
Strangely enough,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
strangely enough, I didn't have to do that. I'm using Firefox Windows 1064, and I did not have to clear cache.
Yeah, Firefox doesn't hold on to shit like Chrome does.
So yeah, all I had to do was, the only tricky part was figuring out how to run Notepad in administrator mode. It turns out you just press the Windows key, type Notepad, and then right-click on what it finds and choose Run as Administrator. Then you got to navigate to that etc folder.
Okay, Frizz. Playing
Go ahead.
around with the new map viewer, one suggestion is with the targeting lines. If a unit becomes out of range, it clears the target so that there's not a targeting line going all the way across your map.
Oh, does it still try to draw a line even if you can't see a unit?
Yeah, like my Leopard was like 40, 50 away from the shack, and he's still trailing a line all the way to him.
Oh, so he could still see him,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, he was still
But
in
he was
the
just
path of vision. Yeah, because he was.
okay.
My
But
other
he
units
just
could see him. He couldn't technically see them, but my other units could, and it was still drawing a line to him.
Hey Frizz, I'm getting a secure connection failed error.
Are you connecting via HTTP or HTTPS?
Beg pardon?
Don't worry, don't worry.
I'm logged in, but when I try to drop, it says secure connection failed, error occurred, connection to command drop shock.com, PR connect reset error.
Can you post a screenshot of that?
Yeah, no
Sure.
problem.
Frizz, do you have an SSL set on it?
I do. They moved it all over. I'm actually in it with SSL, and that was part of the reason we needed to migrate. Was the TLS was too old on the old server, and this new modern one that was an issue.
It
But
could be
yeah, I'm on
because
HTTPS and Chrome, not seeing any issues.
it could be because he's trying to connect via HTTP to an SSL skilled server.
The server supports both, so you should be able to. It was forcing you to HTTPS for a while just because Facebook recommended that, and then I realized it was probably dumb to do something that Facebook was recommending. So now you choose if you want it in HTTPS, you can run it in HTTPS. If you want it in HTTP, then you can do that too. But I wonder if something is still cached, and that's why it's complaining because the HTTPS is probably pointed to the old server, and
Oh, okay. So I need to go clear cache in Firefox.
that might be it. Yes.
Okay, do I really need to clear all my cookies? Because that's a huge pain in the ass. Or can I just clear cached web content? Clear cached web content.
You need to clear your DNS cache. If I imagine Firefox has one. One sec. Let me Google that for you.
Oh, I can do that. Okay, if you want to help me out here, remind me how I post a screenshot to Discord.
Drag and drop it.
Just use the
Oh,
snipping
just
tool.
drag and drop it into CodeJam? Okay, cool. That no worky.
You can just take the screenshot and then Control V, and it'll paste it in.
Son of a bitch.
So yeah, if you're on the new server, just let me know what you're thinking of there we go.
There it is. That's a good suggestion. I didn't know I could do that. Thank you. How clear DNS cache in Chuga Chuga?
Okay. Yeah, I'll bet it's trying to connect to both servers, and the other server is going, I don't know what you're talking about, and freaking out. Error occurs. PR connection reset error.
It's what's it called, antivirus software blocking it.
If that was it, the message would say Kaspersky prominently. They always advertise their doings.
The web server itself wouldn't return that response. It's
I
just
don't
if
know.
your
You have to
connection's
look at the
interrupted
you
or
have to look at
denied.
the screenshot I posted. I'm not sure how to answer that question. History.
Yeah, I'd say start with trying to clear cache and see how it goes.
It's
We're gonna have some
Tis-
weirdness while we're on these two servers, because this isn't how the internet is meant to work. Like an IP address is really supposed to a domain name should resolve to an IP address, and right now we're trying to force it into a different IP address, and so something else might be complaining when we make the official switch. Once all the DNS caching resolves, hopefully we don't see any problems like this.
Frizz, do you mind if I quickly just change the topic or do you want to talk anything more server related?
No, I'm just I'm hoping just burn a little bit of time to see if anybody sees major issues with the new server, because if I'd like to get moved over to this as soon as possible, because that's then going to let me work on new things. So yeah, let's talk about something else.
It's just something while I'm actively targeting. So I've currently got 13 hogs down, and I sometimes target them every turn, I sometimes don't. Is there a way for the new map viewer to keep the order of the units when the turn refreshes? Because say I target the top 6 and forget the top 7 or don't have time to, when I'm then going back through, they've moved around. So it'd be nice if I could go back to where I couldn't target, and it'll really help with efficiency of targeting. Because at the moment, I then have to just kind of spam A or the hotkey for attack just to see what's currently attacking. Or normally what I do in mass PvP is just retarget, and it's not very efficient. So is there a way, in short, to just have it so that stack stays still when the turn refreshes in the exact order it was previously?
So that is why I'm my end goal is to do all this in JavaScript, because once your browser is rendering all of this refreshing, things moving, it all goes away. Once something is on the screen for you, it is going to persist until you refresh the browser, and you will never need to refresh the browser because the game will be moving units and adding bandits and revealing sectors as you're playing the game. Because right now what happens is, like, the turn counts down, the game runs, you have to refresh the page to get new values from the server, and the server is drawing the page for you. When we move that all to your client side, everything stays where it is. There's no flash. Whatever you were doing, like if you were, how many times have you been like issuing an order or looking at a unit and the turn refreshed and the whole page went away? Like, that's how the game is built. All that stops happening when we move to JavaScript processing.
Cool, that's good. So just a side comment, it wasn't anything I wanted to actively discuss, but that's good that that'll be one of a plethora of things that will be fixed come JavaScript.
Yep.
If possible, I have a feature request. It should be something small, but you know when you're attacking a target and you have the selector up, is it possible to have a rangefinder on there to tell you how many sort of tiles away it is?
Yes, and I believe there actually used to be a rangefinder on that. I just accidentally took it out when I did the turn processor. Let me make a note to take a look at the code. If it's something I can easily re-enable, I will do that.
Appreciate it very much, thank you.
One more thing with the new map viewer. Units no longer show their health and status or their health numbers underneath the status on the orders pop-up. At least for me, I don't know if anybody else has that issue. That'd be nice to have fixed.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was a bit on the hackier side, so I really gutted that. I'm gonna have to pretty much rewrite that to get that in there.
Thurston has worked on a script that shows. I've just put a screenshot in CodeJam, so it pulls the gunnery piloting merits and we haven't properly tested it, but percentages of shields and armor, so we can share that with you because we need some more people to kind of test it. If you're happy for us to, Chris.
Really cool. Please do.
Yeah, that sounds good. And see if we do that, we can get rid of all that on the unit panel itself, and then maybe add in some quick commands or actives via your unit list,
Well, here's the interesting thing. This is a good conversation point that I wanted to have with, not now, because obviously I didn't want to take up Frizz's time, but with 2D, Core Clark said, with 2D, you see the gunnery and piloting on the right-hand side, but in 3D, you don't. So there is information available based on which type of viewership you have on the units. So we need to address a level of continuity through there. So maybe even the tiling at the bottom of the 3D kind of gets split in half and you can see it, because we don't want people to not have the information at hand just because they're choosing a different 2D or 3D choice. But yeah, I know that's a point for another time, but it'd be interesting to see how we can move the right-hand side or add something similar to, I don't know, something similar to Warcraft, where it's at the bottom and you have a bunch of hotkeys that you assign, and you kind of, yeah, with loads of different abilities on it, but it entirely depends on how far you want to go, really. And if we do all these hacky changes now, will Frizz just create something that can be, you know, that's just 10 times better in the coming months?
Yeah, like X has been asking, I want to move pretty much all of it's going to be moved into JavaScript and into an API. So the end state here is really it's your web browser is going to call it to the server, and the server is going to send back all the data. It's not going to send back the game. It's just going to send back raw data about what the game state is, and then your client is going to build it. And at that point, then the scripting gets so much easier because it's just a matter of adding additional data to the data set or using data that's already there.
This here's Old Possum again. I cleared the cache on Firefox and restarted the browser. That was the crucial part. Clearing cache alone didn't fix it. Clearing cache and restarting browser fixed it. I'm logged in. It's running fine. I'm deployed on Terrace right now.
Awesome. All right. Let me know how it goes.
No, I thought I'd just keep it to myself.
Should we jump straight into bases, which is might be a conversation with no real kind of change today, but let's kind of crack open that can now, because I feel like it's going to be a lot of people are going to want to give their 2 cents on it.
Yeah, let's.
Bases or tuna?
Yeah, either or.
We've kind of teased bases for the last couple of weeks. Why don't we start on that conversation? My instinct is it's such a large topic. I don't, unless there's something that really hits. Well, this is going to be a series of conversations because out of everything that's been balanced in the game, I think buildings and bases have been balanced the least. So who wants to?
Why not? I will. I'm really glad you agree with that in terms of the imbalance. I think there's only a handful of people in the game, and less so here, that are very happily and actively kind of solo attacker base. There's a strict strategy to do it. You know, you can only really do it with one commander unit, and you have to catch them at a certain time. And with PvP hours on Mort being kind of windowed, it creates a funnel of attention. So all that apart from in terms of getting the element of surprise, I think the main thing for me as an active lover of base attacks, I prefer them over defenses. It's the classic how, you know, an undefended base is just an undefended base, but a defended base really can make one defender look like 2 defenders. And then when you get to 2, 3, 4 attackers and 2, 3, 4 defenders, it was really important. You know, one support building can really change the tide of a battle. So I guess really we need to look at, well, what is the purpose of the base? Is the base there to kind of keep the attacker away and keep the defender alive for a certain period of time and then serve its purpose? Or is it this, you know, this other player that you can't really control, that's got a shit ton of HP, that allows people to drop, that gives people various buffs? I think we need to kind of pinpoint how we all view a base and then reverse engineer what works currently and then what doesn't and falls outside of that, and then kind of go from there. Because I think a lot of people have different views on what a base's purpose is. I think that might be the best place to start.
God, Mr. Technical over here. It's just a base. A base is a base is a base.
I wish it was that.
I view a base as your strategy point. This is where, Like on Hades, back in the day, we used to redeploy bases, 50 times to get that nice sweet spot location somewhere towards the middle of the map, so you were never too far away from attacking anybody. Um, I think it's where, you kind of get all your units set up. If you're going to go off and do an attack like on Mord or Hades or something, you get everybody together. It's like, hey, we're going to all drop. We're going to need a 30-minute window thanks to Drop Shock. We all need to get together. And then as far as base defenses go, I think a base is just more there to kind of secure an objective point, which it serves less of a point nowadays than it used to. As far as just defending a node, there's a 4-hour window, and whether the base is there or not, personally don't think it makes a huge difference once your units are there to fight. Nobody drops turrets because turrets don't do enough damage. I mean, we can get a simple unit that does more damage per turn with more health than any turret that can be in the game, outside of the hybrid family there, which you only get one of. As far as buffs go, other than the very first turn of moving into a base, there's very few debuffs you get. I would say the strongest buildings in the game are the EMP generator and the tracking station right now. And of course PDS, so that you can't just like jump 100 katanas on top of people. But outside of those 3 buildings on the defensive side, there's not really any strength to a base other than the fact it gives you a starting point for an objective, in my opinion.
I kind of disagree with that. Because from recent base assaults that sort of TLP and SOS have done against each other, it more or less feels like if you don't get support down in the first 3 turns, you just lose.
If you don't get what in the first 3 turns?
So the base support down, so tracking station, PDS, both thumpers, the command tower, you just end up losing like the fight completely if someone drops.
But how would you lose that fight without those buildings if the odds are somewhat equal? Like, unless you're being outnumbered significantly, you should have the exact same odds with or without a base to defend the objective.
Well, the EMP generator takes your region away and 25% of your shields. Tracking station allows them to hit you if you're energy, and energy is the preferred attacking and defending, in inverted commas, kind of any weapon type. I did it with Dog. Me and Dog fought BL against BL. He was able to sit at 8 range and hit me with guaranteed, and I was kind of hitting him with below average, and that was it. I couldn't reach in any further, coupled with 99% phasing across everything. My fault for not bringing DWAs. Dog does have warped, but I've got warped as well, and warped is only 1 gunnery level, so that would go from easy to difficult. So it's kind of a pointless. It doesn't make that much of an impact. The impact is the tracking station and Whitman stack, so that's plus 6 gunnery levels. But yeah, I guess without going too specific into specific examples and scenarios, if you don't pop the support in 2 to 3 turns, you're going to be blown up. You can comfortably 2-to-1 any unit if the EMP generator is up, and you'll wipe the entire, you'll wipe everything out. I guess the only way a base assault is easier is if you're in the base before they drop, because then they've got drop shock. But then the overwhelming to hit that's in the game now, you can kind of start shooting through drop shock a little earlier. So yeah, it's just there's a lot of variables that make base assaults easy and hard, and base defenses easy and hard. And I think it's a really fine. I think it's a balance for as much like the trifecta of weapon types. Everyone's going to think it's imbalanced, but if we can get as close to an overall agreement of where we sit with it, I think that'll be enough. And I don't think it's that far away, to be honest. I think we're close.
Well, my only, we'll jump in here real quick. My only gripe with bases right now is just the tripling of support buildings. It's kind of like you can just throw heavy thumpers and command towers and tracking stations all over the place because they only cost 4 power.
Now, I agree they should be much higher power, especially like the PDS. I mean, I can see the command tower staying on the lower side of things, but a PDS, a heavy thumper, like if you think about what the effect is and what it would take to actually run a theoretical building of that type, it would need a lot of power. I mean, a PDS is going to do 75 damage by looking at the building by rapidly spinning around in circles and high targeting a whole bunch of things all at once and hitting crucial points. So it would take a lot of power to do something like that. A heavy thumper is charging up this massive thundering shock to slam onto the ground essentially and disrupt everything and send out waves of energy to distort targeting systems and things of those sorts. That's a high power building to do things of that magnitude.
You don't necessarily know that's how it works. It could be just playing Eminem really loud.
Well, I mean, you still got to power those speakers. Have you ever used this low wattage amp to do anything? It just makes your car sound like a rice burner.
I think that's an interesting point because one thing I kind of had a random idea of was categorizing buildings and then having a hard limit on them. Firstly, support units, support buildings, or what we define as support, should all be unique. The biggest thing at the moment to pretty much counter a fight, if someone's solo attacking a base, is put support on the east and the west, or the north and the south. And then if you commit to an attack from one side, you can't accurately, you get close with energy, half of them are going to be shootable. You're either not going to hit or you're going to be hitting through phase, and energy enables you to run. But if you jump in with missiles or ballistics, you're going to be hard up, moving in at slow speed, trying to take that support out. And one could argue that the bases back in the day when defense platforms and guardian lasers were the thing, you would run 10 to 20 to 30 guns, and you'd use that. Someone would drop random, they'd target that to take out bases, but then with the engineer change and the armor going to 50% from 25, damage, you've got 300 HP units, 150 damage. Really all it is now is, if I can keep the command tower and the thumper alive for as long as possible, I've got a fair shot of fighting. That's the whole strategy. Just delay and keep something up so I don't get chewed up, and then hopefully I can kill them in a couple of turns. And that's kind of not... I know some people that don't even bother to drop once someone's in the base, and I equally know people that will happily drop hot. But 9 times out of 10, if you're dropping hot, which means if you're dropping when support is down and there aren't people in the base, you're gonna lose, unless you're really lucky and you've hard countered them.
Which I don't necessarily like. Back in the day, the wars with PGF and Affliction and Resurrected, like, we would drop 4 or 5 people inside of a 5-minute process to get out and fight and hold a base, while there were just waves of armies coming in one after the other, and that felt a lot better than it does now, to be honest. I understand the drop shock and the being able to take a base, I think, is way easier than it used to be. I mean, base fights used to last consistent hours on end of just redropping and being able to fight immediately, not being kind of weighed down by, well, I need to run away from the base for the first couple turns so that I get my drop shock to wear off, and then I can run back inside the base to actually defend it. But at this point, they've already taken out 5 or 6 more buildings. They've already pushed forward another 5 or 6 squares. I'm kind of fighting behind my base now. I can't really defend it. I don't like that feeling, as opposed to, okay, I can drop to my base and I'm actually going to defend my location. I think bases should be hard to take, but they should still be a strategic point of, okay, this is where we fight from. This is the objective. I took the initial step of capturing the objective. I took the initial step and cost of building a base, of setting this location up. I've invested these hours. If you're 1 or 2 person faction deploying 1 or 2 buildings a turn, I've spent the hours of building all of this up, and now somebody can come in and roll my base in 20 turns, and if I don't drop when I see them coming 4 or 5 turns in advance, then they're going to be inside my base and it's all gone. So I've wasted the setup time, the capture time, the initial investments of everything, only to lose it all because I wasn't available inside this select 10-turn window to defend an objective that I spent all this time getting and building.
Yeah, and that's not fun. And I think I was thinking while you were talking, PK, I don't think I know another game that handles the dynamic of PvP, specifically base attacks, like Drop Shock. Because if you look at any other game, look at any FPS, any RTS, Command and Conquer, anything like that, normally you're engaging in a fight with someone, and you go, right, I'm joining a private game or I'm joining a public game. Here are the rules. You never really have a game where someone is around and you're kind of catching them on the hop, because the surprise, as you say, is the key factor of if you're going to win the fight or get a leg up in the fight. There's not really another game that does that, where everyone's watching and waiting for someone to make the first move, like chess. So I don't know if the answer is to create this new environment where when you drop, you drop for the fight and the fight's there. And I don't know what that looks like, but right now we need to have this. We need to take away the PvP windows. Help with a focused 5-hour window of making something happen, but we really need to move away from that punch in the gut if you just aren't around enough to kind of camp and watch this. Because Dogs recently, which is a fair and fine strategy, Dogs able to get a 10-speed army in, so you've got 60 seconds to get down, or he's gonna, with one sensor ping, if you have a large sensor, or he's gonna be at the edge of the base sector in 2 turns. Totally fine strategy. He's worked it. He's TFC Speed Demon. He's modded them specifically for that, but that's not fun for a casual player. He's meticulously made a really good strategy, and you can't nerf him or argue otherwise for that. The key is for the casual player, these people that we want to return, play weekly, return every week, and enjoy the game and talk about it to their friends. There needs to be fun for defending a base. And I don't feel like there's a reason at the moment. We've got 15 people that we kind of fight with because we're all friends and we're kind of bored, rather than I'm going to defend this because I genuinely believe that there's a benefit for this, if that makes sense. I just don't feel like there's a benefit right now.
Well, I strongly agree. I think I was saying that like 4 or 5 months ago when we were all doing these ridiculous fights for days on end. Is, you know what? 500 units just ain't worth 12 terabucks.
Frizz, what was your vision of faction war? Because obviously it's a big pull toward the original revenue model of people kind of racing towards structs, racing towards resources to then fight in other areas and fund new players. So it's a big important point. Where did you feel it fell out of balance, and what were your biggest struggles? And kind of after hearing us kind of agony on it, do you have any ideas in your head at the moment or anything that stands out?
That's a great question. It's tricky because I think 3 months ago, when a lot of people came back, there was just the newness, the newness, I guess you could say, of it all, of kind of jumping in and doing these big battles. And so the fun was the battle for the sake of the battle. Like that was the whole incentive. We've tried, or I've tried a bunch of different incentives. I've tried faction points. I've tried command. I've tried terabucks. I've tried unknown. Nothing really. It's hard to make. It's funny for a game that has PvP. Um, how do you really encourage that PvP in a meaningful way? I think my instinct is, though, we're in a much different place now than we were, let's say, 10 years ago. Because before, as people have said, someone had their giant army that they spent a lot of time and maybe even some money on as well, and they went around stomping people, and then maybe they met their match or something happened, they had a disconnect or there was a server issue and they lost a big chunk of it. Those people quit because it was they enjoyed winning, and the second they lost, because the loss was so severe and such an enormous like kick in the shins, it just soured them towards the game. And that is a difficult thing to balance in PvP, because the fun part is you're fighting other players, and that's where the challenge and that's where the excitement comes out of. But at the end of the day, someone is going to have to win and someone is going to have to lose. And that means some person is going to have a really enjoyable experience and someone is going to have a really crummy experience. And if somebody has enough crummy experiences playing a game, they're just going to stop playing that game. So for me, when I think about this, it's become less about, okay, how do I just create an incentive that you fight over? Because in all the years that I've been working on this game, I've never seen that work. I have yet to when there's a new planet, I think the incentive doesn't matter. I think people go to a new planet just because it's new and they want to check it out. It's the curiosity factor, and then people just happen to bring a big army, and somebody else brings a big army, and there's a fight that happens. So what I want to try this time around is more about features that people want to go to a planet to do, and then PvP just happens. So that's why like large army PvP has kind of been at the bottom of the list, is because there's been so many other pieces that need to get fixed along the way. The server needs to be more performant. The turns need to be able to be more varied. Um, just so much needed to be fixed before we could really get into the meat of how do we do meaningful large scale PvP, and bases flow right into that. I think just deploying an entire base and dropping it on somebody's head and then having to redeploy it and redeploy it, that doesn't work very well. I think the Dominus model is probably the best approach, where you have to slowly, you can kind of pick exactly where you want the base and then you slowly build it up. Um, and then what other features do we wrap around that? I think having events on the planet that drive people to the planet make it more interesting. There's been a drought of shack buildings, and the code I was working on before I realized how much other work was needed was this kind of shack hive base invasion, where the shack would deploy a series of bases and a bunch of units and really take over a planet and present themselves as a threat. And I think when that happens, if it's more rare, now you've got factions that they're not going down there to fight each other. They're down there to take on the Shakar and to get those buildings. And we can throw other incentives around that make sense around that theme as well. But then if you've got a big army there and somebody else in a different faction has a big army there, PvP is just going to happen. And I think that's the kind of PvP that's interesting. It's less about I just want to build an army to stomp someone. It's more, I'm going to go down and do this thing, and I can go get in this big PvP battle. I'm going to go for it. Uh, I think that also changes how you feel about the game if you were to lose, because it's less about I went to go do this thing, which is PvP, and I didn't get to do the thing, and so now I'm upset, which is understandable. I went to go fight the Shakar, and while I was there, I got a chance to PvP. The PvP didn't go very well, but at least I got some shack buildings, or I accomplished this other thing that I was trying to do. I think when we can change the reason people are going to planets, going to be big PvP planets, uh, that will make big PvP more rewarding. And I think that's going to reveal more about how we address bases and large army balance and things like that. Is so for so long our context has just been, well, you drop a big army, you go smash a base. That's what you do with it. And so we've got so many rules around that. We can take a step back and say, well, what if you weren't dropping the big army to go smash a base? What if you were dropping that big army to go do something else, and then you just happened to run into somebody else with a big army, and then you had a battle? I think that's going to change the conversation, if we can change the incentives for why people are dropping big armies.
Hyde mentioned something also. It's kind of on and off topic. The nodes on Dom, I think if they were coded to work the same way as a sensor array, to where it gave you a line of sight, but also sent notifications into the faction chat of, hey, there's been an enemy sighted, that would make them significantly more valuable to at least try to control the 8 around your base at the minimum. And it gives you the heads up of, hey, there's an army, or maybe even just a loggerhead approaching to steal some unknown. That would make things a little more interesting for when we do this kind of merger of planets. Kind of give more incentive towards the controlling more than just one or two nodes and the minimum percentage and all that kind of stuff, and also avoids the need of having a net set up and doing all this random stuff.
Yeah. So that was actually, there was a Reddit comment about that I responded to about why relics, and when I say relic, the database thinks of beacons, actual relics, nodes, and even supplies. Those are all relic code to it. They're a type of relic. It's just kind of like a static thing on a planet that you can interact with. I pulled vision from all of those except for the beacon on uh, Zetis, and then we put it back because it was just really difficult to work with that planet without having vision of the beacon. And in doing that, I changed it from, because the problem was, there's two pieces to this. One, the game is really built around having some kind of awareness of what you control through relics. The problem is it was using the traditional vision code, which is the sector you're in and then the 8 sectors around you, which is a huge strategic advantage just for holding something static. You can see somebody coming 2 or 3 turns out, and you have plenty of time to respond to them or communicate that, hey, we're gonna do something about this guy here. And because there's so much vision, it's very difficult for somebody to avoid that sector, or not. They can enter a square and not realize that they've suddenly been revealed. And it, for a game that's turn based, that has a lot of setup and prep time, I don't like that. I don't like that you can make a misstep completely without unintentionally doing a major strategic blunder, and it's out of your hands. So in order to meet both needs, what I'm intending to do is owned relics will give vision of the sector, just that 10 by 10 square that they're in. So you'll be able to see something. If someone intentionally goes into your sector, you'll see them, but they will not give traditional unit view of the 8 sectors around them. So what that means is, now if an army's invading, if they don't come directly into the sectors, they can sneak their way closer and closer to your base. um, I do want to enable something where maybe you can build listening posts at the nodes, and build smaller little mini bases. Maybe we give you the opportunity to build a couple of those, and that way you strategically decide, okay, this is going to be our main base. We're going to set up listening posts in these couple spaces here, here, and here, and that should give us an idea if another team is coming at us. And then the listening posts can leverage the code that's already in there to give faction warnings. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think that would it'd be a good balance to where you still have strategic pathing to take as far as going for a base or attacking, but you still have the opportunity to kind of get some sort of heads up that hey, things are fixing to go awry. You might want to prepare, get some people online, or message some folks, whatever. Back to your topic, also though, the going down to fight like shack bases and kind of bumping into PvP. I like that idea as well because then you're not modding for okay, hey, they have an army of Gats down and an army of this. Those are heavy shield type units. I need to be bringing EMP ammo, or I need to be bringing this, or I need to bring the ballistic defense. You're modding for the shack, and then if you happen to bump into PvP, it's not like, oh well crap, I modded 50 specific units with these specific variants and mods and all these crews specifically for this task, and I still failed, I still lost. You're going down for something else and kind of bumping into this random thing where you're both not really prepared to fight each other. You're just kind of happening.
And I also think that's going to be more interesting because, yeah, like you said, you're going to have to think more. That goes more into the strategy of your setup. It's like, okay, I want to fight Shaq, but what if I also hit some PvP? Well, maybe I want to mod a little differently because I want to be flexible to go PvE or PvP, on the planet. And I think PvP hours are going to be a big part of that too, because then you have people that maybe they do just want to do PvE, and so they know, okay, for the next 4 hours, if the shock are there, I can go fight them, and I don't have to worry about somebody coming to jump me. But maybe they get near the end of the time and they haven't salvaged everything yet. They might need to have to call some faction mates to watch their back when the PvP window opens up on them.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's another good mechanic to add in there when we get to round to doing that.
Cool. So yeah, this is like we've I think we've got a pretty good feel for what we want on the mass PvP planet, and I think that's going to then help uh, inform us about what bases really need, because bases really feed they're kind of your where you can feel a little more comfort. I guess in a PvP battle, you can kind of fall back to your base without having to leave the planet entirely, lick your wounds, and then decide if you want to go back out or if you want to get off the planet. Um, and so it's a fine. So we've gone back and forth so much on those. You know, at some points it was too easy to attack them, so we kind of beefed up. We added a lot of defensive buildings, and then it was too easy to defend them just by dropping, so we added drop shock. Um, yeah, there's a lot more that needs to happen there, but I think what needs to happen first is we need to make the mass PvP that happens meaningful, where it's not just like a scheduled Saturday football event, where it's like PvP Monday. You know, it's more, hey, you know, this thing happened on the planet that dropped a lot of resources, like, or shack buildings, or there's something I want to go do. But in doing that, you know, I am opening up the opportunity for mass PvP.
No, I agree entirely. The current mechanics of the nodes and the payouts and whatnot is not very appealing to me personally, and I know several people that it's not very appealing to. I do like to just fight and throw a couple armies at things every once in a while, but it's definitely not something I'm going to do on the regular if there's no real valid point to doing it. Uh, it was definitely a lot of fun when we all kind of first got back together because, you know, we hadn't all just kind of blasted each other for hours on end. But once that wore off, it was more like, okay, so I'm going to run out of command and ore real soon. What do I meaningfully need to be doing in order to kind of make myself last and be rewarding to do, as opposed to just kind of blasting everything I have at folks for hours on end?
Exactly. And I think just as we talked about, oh, well, let's just throw more tiny bucks at it or something like that. I feel like it needs to be an actual mechanic, some kind of story that's woven into the game, like the Shakar, like the Kilra, like the bandits. You know, the bandit swarm and the Shakar Hive are two mechanics that are built for that kind of like incentive to drop large armies and to fight another large force. Uh, so I'm looking forward to getting those back in and kind of and tuning up one of the large PvP planets and seeing what happens with that. I think we talked about doubling the CE limit as well to get to have people to get larger forces out there. Uh, that's feeling better and better to me. Just to like, let's have a planet where you can really bring a lot of units and really slug and really kind of turn it into a slugfest, because with the we talked about kind of per faction and per faction ally CE caps. You know, we do have a balancing mechanic around that, and then you get into discussions about, you know, someone deploying down to do PVE, and then a PvP fight breaks out, and now the faction has to kind of coordinate who's going to deploy what to get down to the planet and deal with that.
Yeah, I think it's going to make things a lot more interesting, and it'll kind of somewhat advantage smaller factions too, because you're not going to have as much of the, okay, well, you can only do this, I can only do this, blah 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 blah. Well, there's only two or three of us, so we've got a 500 C pool. We can all just kind of drop whatever, as opposed to if there's 5 or 6 people on, they're like, well, I can only bring 60K, you can only bring 50, or you're only going to be able to bring 100 because he's already down with 200 to attack the shack with. So we're all kind of hand tied here on what we can bring to help.
And I think once we get into that area, then we can tune those numbers and make it really interesting. I want to reply to two comments in chat. Hyde was asking about kind of the initiator or first move for the PvP window. We've talked about the idea that the nodes you own actually give you salvage rights, and you can only capture them during. Well, we've already got rules that prevent capture if units are there, but that effectively would make it so you could only capture them during the PvP window. So suddenly, you know, a team that, you know, does a big territory grab has an advantage in PvP, because even if they lose units at the close of that window, if the other side hasn't managed to capture that territory, they'll be able to salvage all their losses. So that it may, we'll have to see how that plays out, but that may open up a really cool dynamic of kind of pushing for territory and make the territory a lot more meaningful.
Well, and more along that comment is like when a PvP window first opens up, what I see kind of at this point is it's a lot of everyone waiting for their base to be attacked. Like the advantage seems, maybe it's just me being a lot more of a defensive player versus someone like Dog rushing a bunch of BLs in, but it typically ends up most players I see waiting on the defense because that offense is a lot more risky.
Yeah. Well, and also, if someone is going to hit you in your base, that's an advantage to you. The attack buffs, the damage buffs. Why not have somebody attack? Why not have if somebody's going to give themselves a disadvantage? Yeah, I'd rather fight like that, and that's why we need things that pull people out of bases and get them doing other things on the planet. Then I think mass PvP opens up a lot more. Prash also had a comment that's something that I thought about this last week. Having Aldous PvP. What's the feeling on that?
I would say no.
Well, what if it flipped? What if one orbit it was PvE and the next orbit it was PvP? Kind of like we do with Zedis and the changing CE limit.
I would think that's a little bit hard to balance because you have Shack and that alone is a huge threat. So, and also that eliminate the possibility of cross-faction cooperation a little bit. Actually, no, that doesn't really hurt it. But what I think is that the situation can get chaotic, and then it also opens a lot of probability for griefing and like people just drop down and just it's already a challenging content, and I think we should change that if we want to allow PvP on Alpha.
Okay, so maybe go ahead. Sorry, dog.
To jump in here for that. I actually really like the idea of alternating cycles. So it still leaves for people who just want the PvE experience, they can go for an all this cycle where there's PvP turned off. But then we have that objective for a PvP cycle, like every other time. I don't think that would be super imbalanced as far as like fighting Shack and then having to fend off PvP. It just kind of gets more people involved.
What if we did something really crazy with the PvP cycle where it was like one unit, activated commander units only, the Shack spawn is modified so that it's a challenge, but it's not overwhelming. What if it's something what if it's a crazy back and forth like that?
I would think that there would need to be a reward because, for example, if Shack rolls both party over, everyone lose everything. If PvP happen and then you get Shack as well, and then it's already 100 turn timer, and you're likely not going to be able to recover everything. The situation as is like the idea is fun, but to balance it out, it needs a lot of work.
Yeah, we could. Well, I mean, we could do some interesting things. We could have during the PvP cycle, maybe Shack also have signals, but they don't spawn as frequently. And maybe there's something we need some other reason to be on the planet as well. There's something here. We can kind of see explore this.
I think if you just had an alternating cycle where one cycle was PvE and the other was PvP, but during the PvP cycle you had a higher chance of receiving Shack tiers and stuff from salvaging, I think that creates a bigger incentive to actually do the PvE aspects as well.
Okay, just kind of bump the loot a little. I mean, like Dog has a bazillion tiers and also the the bandit's eyes and things like that. Would this up to loot be enough reason? I mean, what would be a nice compelling reason for you to want to get in a really expensive commander unit and get onto a PvP planet?
Are we talking just leaving all this as is, or just doing the alternating cycles, or going through the commander? One thing that you could do if you wanted to spice up the PvP cycle is enable Shack signals. How it is on Conan.
Okay, yeah, maybe on the if we do that would actually be so. What if for the PvP cycle there's no bandit spawns? It's all Shack spawns, but it's like one Shakar or two Shakar, and they have a pretty good chance of having a signal or something like that. Well, then we'd need to be able to stack signals. Like your commander could accumulate like 4 or 5 signals, because right now it's limited 1 unit, 1 signal. But what if they stacked? So if you kill like 10 shack, maybe like there's a 50% chance of signal. So your commander now has like 5 signals that they're running around with.
Well, kind of to touch on Old Possum's idea and add something else in, what if it was a way to receive a specific type of tuned unit, like a tuned commander unit that actually had the mods in it, or maybe like a whole bunch of D variants or something along those lines, but it was a capture the flag type scenario to where there's one signal that you get for killing the shack, and then we all kind of fight each other, and whoever ends up holding that one beacon or that one signal at the end of the cycle would get a good tuned unit, tuned commander unit of some sorts. Or even just a specific tuned advanced unit or elite, like a BA3 or a Gatlinger or something that was actually good with mods. Doesn't necessarily have to be the same mods that are kind of ridiculous for some units, but something more specific to that planet to where there was one really good prize.
On the note of that, I do kind of like the idea of having slightly stronger tune units in, and don't shoot me for it yet, but is it possible to randomize what comes on the tuned units? So maybe I got lucky and I got a BA3, but it got a shield mod on it.
Totally. Actually, and that might need to, given how powerful tune units. We mentioned we might have to talk about tune units, so I think you've kind of diverted the conversation here. That might need to be the balancing factor for tune units, is that the mods on them are randomized. And then I don't obviously, like the Death Hog is always going to have its laser gun, because we can't nerf the Death Hog. But I've been thinking about what to do about tuned units, because it's definitely sort of the elephant in the room right now, because they're just so much better for the CE cost than anything else you can bring. It skews the game, and it's going to continue to skew the game.
I think
what if you randomize the mods, but also randomize the 8 variants that you get as well?
Yeah, I was gonna say randomizing the variants would be good.
Like 4D variants, or there's a chance you could get like 3D and 4E variants or something.
Yeah, you happen to get like
potentially be useless.
A Bright Lance with 5 M variants.
Yeah, then I guess I do like it. Tuned units are kind of like named weapons in other games. They're weird, but can be good, and it's a known quantity, right? Like I played a lot of Division, and they randomized everything. Even the named weapons had some random qualities, and it always just made like getting so you would get this cool loot, and then you'd look at it and you'd be like, oh, it's crap, because what you always get this best in slot, right? It's always like, I really want XYZ. So I don't know. I think maybe there's something there, but it has to be done very carefully.
I mean, even in like I don't know if anybody's played a whole lot of Diablo 3 or anything, but even if you got like a primal weapon, so it's got guaranteed max stats, everything, if it doesn't have 3 substats that are for your build, you just got a completely useless primal weapon, essentially.
Well, I'll figure we'll eat after we get back.
I'd rather make.
Pretty soon.
So, if I may add my 2 cents here. So, when Tune Unit first came out, it was not too much of an issue because nobody had them. I feel like if you randomize the mod, then you would create an even wider gap between those who have perfect VAR and everything and those who do not. So, I think the goal here is to make it less extreme in terms of the difference between having the perfect everything and the casual player, and I don't think randomization is good for a specific role.
There are levers for tuned units. I mean, they can always be nerfed. I'd hate to do that, because it's just there's so much fun, and they're so OP. Like that's the point of them. Like, they're broken OP, and they're kind of introduced when it was like, hey, this is our last hurrah. Let's just go out with a bang. And now that it looks like we're sticking around for a little bit, it's like, oh, well, this is going to be problematic. So the reflexive thing is just, oh, let's nerf them. But I think that really takes the cool and the fun factor out of them. I think there are some ones that really need to be looked hard at. Sentries are a great example. Jabberwocks have actually turned into a really problematic unit. That's also a comment on Reddit. So Jabberwocks are easy. I think it's just their 20 teleport probably needs to be 15. That way they still have that like, haha, I'm in your face, but it's a bit more manageable. They're not coming at you from two whole sectors away. Uh, Sentries probably similarly can just be dialed down a little bit. They probably shouldn't have been a tuned unit in the first place because they were already a fairly solid. They were a mainline unit in some respects with that 11 range. Making them a tuned unit just it's going to be a problem. But that'll be a future me problem. So going forward, I really want tuned units to be more like under or unused intermediate, or even I think most of the advanced units now with the buffs are all pretty workable. But like a tuned whirlwind would be fantastic. If I get a great idea for that, I just will probably drop it into the game one day. Um, and maybe like gunslingers, howitzers. The intermediates are a great area for tuned units. I really tuned units should have been tuned units with kill round mods should have all been intermediate units. Simples, now that the starting faction has all the simple mods, simples are your starting player units, so you can get a feel for the game. And advanced are your like go-to army fighters when you just want to build a big army and have it nice and consistent. So, where are we going from here? It'll be a problem at some point. It's already kind of rearing its head. I'm keeping an eye on it. If anything is super broken, I think 20 move Jabber 20 teleport Jabberwocks are in the super broken phase right now. If you wake up tomorrow and there's suddenly the teleport is 15, that's why. It's because there's something cool there, but it's. Let me open it up to the group really quick. Does 15 teleport on Jabberwocks still give them something good while removing the really frustrating aspect of that unit?
I would say you could leave it at 20 and just move the controlled speed down to 10.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to suggest.
I think wasn't that what they were before? It was 10-20, right?
I think it was
10, 15, if I recall correctly.
Because that means you can still use tune jabbers as like this cheesy base destroying thing where you can get in instantly and take down key buildings, and like you can use them to traverse like a map really, really fast to get to a fight really quickly if you want to. But at the moment, with how jabbers are working, it's like if you fail a base assault and someone drops tune jabbers, you're automatically having to pay double your drop cost because there's no way you're going to be able to ever get away from them. Like, you just have to immediately emergency evac.
Yeah, because you can never run far enough, and they're always going to shoot you as if they're moving at controlled speed. Okay, let's move. I'll make their teleport. Was it 10 controlled speed, 20 max speed?
That would be fine.
Yes. Yep.
People about bumping the teleport charges down, like Kirby just suggested.
Yeah, because if you look at the Spellbreaker, which is a 25 move, it only has 2 charges. Doesn't make sense that Jabberwocks have 8. I'd say give them like 5 or 6 max.
Spellbreaker should have more.
Yeah. Well, the Spellbreaker, because it's such a large move, and you're probably running your command unit. I'm assuming you're running Actimaster, and you're getting the charge recharge with that. So that's why it's low, is because it's more you've got a pool of like quick move, and then you're going to let Actimaster recharge that over time. Whereas like Jabbers, there's probably some people, but most people aren't going to be able to afford a whole army of Actimaster crews in order to get those recharges. So you're throwing more basic crews in there and just relying on the charges as is. What if we move it to a cooldown on the? Is that too far out if we switch the Jabber to a cooldown on its teleport instead of charges, so that they get one big jump and then they're stuck, or is it kind of the jump in, jump out that makes them good?
honestly, I don't
So-
think a Cobra can do a whole lot to him. It's just the one big jump.
Yeah, because they already so a tuned Jabber with Proton on them already approaches like almost 200 shields with an engineer crew, so they can already jump in and more or less one-to-one any other army unit as a tuned intermediate. So the cooldown doesn't really do anything. If you get ganked by a bunch of them, you're still going to lose a whole lot of stuff.
Okay, I'll just take the max charges down a little bit, like 6 or 5, something like that.
Also, like to address multiple DVARs on units.
Someday, Kirby. Yeah, that's a problem.
I disagree.
Honestly, when I was making tuned units, I was just like, how many Ds can I put on this thing? Let's do all Ds. And it was silly, and it definitely changed the game. And I think the shock value was really cool. I think now that we're out of the shock and we're into kind of the hangover of, okay, what does it mean when a unit has the TED Talk unit? I mean, it was just fun making that. I didn't really think about what it was going to do to the game, because it was like, we're just here for a month or two. This isn't going to be something we ever have to worry about long term. And yet here we are 3+ months later going like, oh, what did I do? So luckily they're marked, so it's easy to spot these units. The multiple Ds. So there's a couple different approaches. Probably the cleanest one is to just remove some of the Ds, like a 3D or something max, like a TEDDD.
Yeah, I think max is
okay.
I do like them having 8 variants though, so I would replace the DVARs. Like throw a couple MVARs on the Sentry.
Yeah. Yeah. TED Med Talk.
Med Talk.
Okay, we can do a let's queue up a tuned units pass, and kind of dive into that in a future code jam, because I don't know. One of my ideas for tuned units also was to leave them more on the OP side, but make it so they never self-salvaged. So make them a huge risk reward unit, effectively.
I think you probably could put that in the game now.
Yeah. Would we want to do that? I mean, even if that was the case, having something with 6 Ds is so overpowered. Maybe we dial back the Ds first, and then we take a step back and say, okay, do we need to do more, or?
I think the only ones that are really the problem are the Sentry and the Jabberwock right now. Like the Sentries are pulling damage numbers like it's the same as 0 range supernovas, which is just absurd. And they're 11 range.
Okay, so why don't we take the Sentries down to like 3Ds and throw some M's on there, and then the Jabberwocks I can adjust the teleport on them.
How do you feel about the killer ammo mod?
Which one? Can you refresh my memory on that?
+2 range, +6 damage for ballistic weapons. That's half of it for the Sentries. The other half is the DVARs.
Yeah, it's a little bit insane.
It's +14 damage
suggestion.
per gun, not including like. Go ahead.
If say, just a crazy idea. What if say advanced or elite could only have 3Ds, intermediate could have 4, and simple could have 5?
Could be fine.
Is that a crazy idea?
No, I think that's where we'll need to go with it.
I just love some of the simple units. They're so cool. I'd like to see them be more relevant.
Yeah, that's why I want to make a lot of the next round of new tuning units will be intermediates. They're really underused.
Sweet.
Because like Whirlwind is a beautiful unit, and I don't think I've ever seen a player deploy a Whirlwind.
They were my go-to unit for so long, and then we nerfed damage commands, and they were like useless.
Just a question. What about if we buff simple a little bit by adjusting the CE penalty? So, for example, the CE penalty should be like if you jump from simple to intermediate, that's a little penalty, but if you go higher, that's a lot of penalty. For example, that would solve some issue with some of the simple because simple mod by itself already has a lot higher CE factor, for example. So, and there's a lot of simple mod, but not a lot of them see good usage, but there's a lot of good intermediate mod. So maybe allowing simple unit to use some intermediate mod, especially with the CE change, that C matters a lot more now. So maybe if they can use intermediate mod a little bit more freely, that would help them out a lot.
Yeah, you do get into an issue where because of the math, if you go like the first 6 months of the game, I think we hit this, and that people in min maxing discovered that you can basically, if you take a simple unit and then just slap the best mods on it, your CE efficiency is so good in comparison to anything else that you never want to deploy intermediate or advanced units, just because the baseline CE on symbols is so low that it
That's a
really.
point.
Sorry, go ahead.
So that's my point. So I know that's an issue. So that's I'm not saying we should remove that. I'm just saying that maybe make it like the higher you go up, the worse the penalty is by a much larger margin. So because having advanced mode on a simple unit, that's obviously going to be very strong, but intermediate, for example, like taking baby step towards that direction is what I'm suggesting.
It's a dangerous game because what you're encouraging is people to deploy simple units to fight advanced units. And if the simple unit is better, then the game is just simple units. And that's exactly what we hit 6 months in when the game was launched.
Be a
I
real
think,
problem. I can see.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that would be a real problem. You're right. So maybe, yeah, not a good idea.
No, I definitely want to see all the units in the game have some use, and I think that's where tuned units can
Good.
come in. I think we can do cool tuned intermediates, even cooler tuned simples, and that's the way we get them reintroduced and we see them deployed. I've really tried to position the regular simples that you build as like newbie units. That's why I said the United Federation. Now you can build every single simple unit and mod in the game right out of the gate. You can just join the faction. You can build whatever you want, and it's a great way to get players to start seeing. Oh, there's all these cool customizations in the game. There's all these things I can have fun with. The intermediates and the advanced are where you do the work effectively. That's where you're actually building armies.
You know, something weird on the market. I bought on the market like 10 days ago a simple unit that had two intermediate mods integrated, and I can't figure out how that happened.
You can integrate intermediate mods onto a simple unit. You just take a permanent CE penalty on it.
Yeah, you use check tiers to do it as opposed to PUs.
Ah, Shack Tears.
Oh, you haven't used tiers yet.
I tried and failed and lost them all.
That would definitely put you off it. Did you do it previously, or was this have you done this recently? Tried to integrate?
So just like maybe 5-6 days ago, 4 or 5 days ago.
Oh, okay. I did make it more generous, and I also put the percent chances of success on there. But yeah, you can still, if you hit a bad run, you can lose all your tiers.
I said about it. It was just educational.
All right. Well, we are coming up on 2 hours. Does anybody have anything they've really got to get off their chest as we're closing this out?
I got one
Fun
more
game.
thing I wanted to bring.
Talking to us.
I wanted to get opinions on Calypso, and it's kind of just free damage right now. When you look at like condensed neutron ammo and armor piercing missiles, you're usually giving something up by not having like cluster missiles or something. Whereas Calypso, there's not a whole lot of energy modifiers. It's just like EMP and plasma. So what I've been doing is just tossing them on Bright Lances because there's no drawback. I mean, if I end up hitting someone with ED2, there's that surprise, and then I have +3 damage. But if I don't, then I still have the +3 damage. I wanted to suggest a -1 range to Calypso.
Really? Does anyone have any thoughts? Well, if you take, doesn't condensed neutronium +1 damage?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
That was kind of what it was built on, is because there is a cost to just a mod slot without anything in it. Like every mod needs to kind of carry some weight because you are eating up a slot by putting something in there. So my feeling is, if there's what's the one that is it the Palace that's just straight damage on
Palace
energy?
is +6. Which also might need a buff.
+6.
Yeah, that +6. So really, Palace should be competing with Calypso. So it sounds like it's not. Is that the case?
But the Calypso lets you ignore the damage reduction, and the Palace does not.
Right, but only certain units have damage reduction.
Correct. I reviewed the Calypso as being like a really specialized tool when you know your enemy likes to do something.
Calypso, I'm just kind of
it
throwing
doesn't
it
need
on
the
there and not
+3.
having to worry about ED2.
I guess also with energy, you're already talking such big damage numbers that giving up 3 damage for the ability to completely ignore damage reduction, which could be giving you a bonus of like a 50% bonus in damage. Okay, so maybe on Calypso we need to reduce. Maybe we just cut the damage bonus down to +1 or something like that, or even
I'd
remove it
actually just
entirely.
put it to like. I'd actually just put it to negative. I put it to like -2 damage or something.
But why?
Because it's also
What's wrong
it's
with it
also
right
an
now?
intermediate mod compared to the advanced as well, though. Like APM and CNR are both advanced mods. Calypso is an intermediate.
True,
Yeah,
that could be.
I'm less worried about the complexity. I don't want to have it do negative damage. I feel like we got into that in the past of like thinking a mod was really good and so giving it some kind of penalty, and it turns out that any kind of penalty just made the mod dog poop. Like it was just like it never got used. The Calypso, I think just because there's so much damage in energy, the ability to ignore damage reduction is huge. Because in like missile or ballistics, you might be talking about the difference between 3 or 4 points of damage. With energy, you could be talking about the difference of 20 to 30 points of damage. And now with overcharge, you could be talking about a 50-point swing in damage with Calypso. So maybe with the Palace, we need. Is the Palace getting any use right now, or is it?
I haven't even looked at it.
No, I haven't used it.
Now, Doug, have you not looked at it because you didn't know it was there, or
I
it's just?
haven't even considered it just because like +6 damage on energy doesn't really seem that worth it.
Yeah. All right. Let's take Palace to +7. Someone was saying that was going to start getting it some play, and let's remove the damage bonus for Calypso.
I think that's fair.
Frizz, what is your opinion on the speed of bases being built at the moment?
Does there even exist a functioning wiki right now?
No, there's not a functioning wiki at the moment.
We are on the hunt. I contacted Gamepedias and they never got back to me. I really want to do it through a third-party service, and if we could not pay for that, that would be fantastic.
Could use GitHub Wiki.
I will volunteer to help out. I mean, as far as like editing and writing and stuff, if you need help with that, it's one of the things I do.
Yeah, I'm taking suggestions. If somebody's like, hey, because there's a bazillion wiki sites, and the ones I looked at, the ones I looked at, I wasn't really impressed with. If someone is like, hey, this is a great site, the hosting is free or really inexpensive, I'll take a serious look at it because we desperately need documentation.
Yeah, because there's MediaWiki, GitHub Wikis, so many.
I checked out a couple and I was really underwhelmed. Yeah, Gamepedia is. I mean, it's wikis for games, and I sent them a message, and they never got back to me. So I don't know. Maybe I'll try it again. Hell, I'll try it again.
Try nagging them a little bit. Sometimes people just drop the ball with the best of intentions.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? I'll try them again one more time.
Fritz, did you hear my last question?
I do not think I did.
I asked what your opinion was on the current speed at which bases are built.
Or like on Dom?
Yeah, just on faction war in general. Because if you consider, like, if you've wiped a base, you need to salvage it and then you need to build it. Building bases can take upwards of like almost an hour.
Okay. Well, we should probably speed that up.
Can you
So
just
what
make
if-
any unit be able to drop a building?
Exactly. That was exactly what I was thinking.
During calm, it's gonna be so annoying.
Yeah, exactly what Claire just said.
Yeah, maybe during PV. So we're gonna have a PVE and PvP window. Maybe during the PVE window, any unit can drop a building, and then during PvP, only your commander can.
Okay, what about on Dominus then?
Is it possible to have different rules for different planets? So maybe Dominus, you can drop 5 buildings per turn.
Yeah, I'd be happy with 5 buildings per turn.
Okay. Yeah, let's keep that in mind. I'm not really doing any changes to the PvP planets until like that is my focus, and then we're gonna change all the stuff. So let's keep that in our back pocket.
Yeah, I just think it's a quite big pain point that is really overlooked. Because if you're a small faction like TLP, where only 2-3 people actively drop to build bases, you end up with like Kirby and I sat there building like 7 hours of bases of like a week, from retaking nodes and then building nodes after they've been attacked and rebuilding dom bases and stuff like that, and it's like just a massive tedious time sink.
Let's make that a little less painful. All right. On that, why don't we close it out? Thank you, everyone, for coming to the Code Jam. I always have a great time. I hope you did as well. I've got the notes for what I'm going to be working on this evening, and it may flow into tomorrow, but it's some pretty straightforward changes. That's going to be the 20 priority supply runs per week. You'll get to do them at your pace. Re-enabling of rangefinder for attack orders. Dom nodes giving sector line of sight. The Jabber teleport going to 10 controlled speed, 20 max speed. The Sentry getting 3Ds and the rest getting replaced with Ms. Palace getting a damage buff of +7 from +6. And the Calypso will have its bonus damage removed. Does that sound good?
20 what? Was 20 what you said early on there in the list?
20 prior. So the priority supply runs on Rin, instead of being every 6 hours, you're going to get a pool of 20, and you get to complete them whenever you want, and then it'll reset each week.
Cool. Great idea.
That's why we do Code Jams. All right, everybody. Have a great week, and keep in mind, if I haven't seen anybody say that the new server is blowing up, so I'm going to let the hosting company know that we are good to migrate. Know that your DNS and the SSL might be wonky. I'll post a message on Reddit when we do the change and giving directions on how to clear your DNS cache, because that'll get you on the new server. But yeah, this should set us up for the future. So it's definitely going to be a good thing.
Yeah, on Firefox, after you go to the history menu and clear the cache, you got to restart the browser.
Good stuff. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
See you.